Welcome to the World of Horror podcast. I'm Mom, aka Christina. WoHos! This week we are diverging from our normal program with a special bonus episode featuring the original friend of the show, Quinn. Welcome, Quinn!
Hey, thanks, Mom, aka Christina, as I know you. It's good to be back.
I know, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute or two.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. It's a Saturday, and that is nice. And I don't know, I have a lot to catch up on for school since our semester's ending very soon. I don't know, just kind of catching up on a bunch of stuff and kind of resting today. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I've been sick for almost 3 whole weeks, and I feel a little better today. I woke up not feeling great, but I went for a little walk and
Feel better after the walk?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to try to, even if it's 10 minutes, just get out and get some air, circulate some air through my lungs, and I don't know, maybe that'll help.
That's helpful, but it's sometimes not helpful in the time of the pollening, which is happening right now in North Carolina.
It's really ridiculous. I mean, I'm not usually that susceptible to the pollen. You and Mac, I think, are really sensitive to it, but today is awful, I think, for any living creature.
One thing that's new since I've last been on the pod is that I installed a vacation on my deck, which is a hammock. So I was actually thinking about going out for vacation later, but it is gross outside.
Yeah, it's
so
disgusting.
I don't know. I don't even know if I am susceptible to it or not. I mean, they say I'm not allergic to anything, but yeah, I feel it today. So something's up.
Yeah, I was sneezy wheezy earlier, so it was pretty nasty. But anyway, this is not a pollen podcast. This is a podcast about the horror movies that we love.
Yay! I don't think I'd be a good pollen podcast host, or guest host. But yeah, I'm really excited to do this today with you because we are looking at probably I think I could very confidently say this is within my top 5 all-time favorite films. And I don't usually rank the films that I love. I don't like to do that, but I can put this there really quite confidently. Did I say what we were looking at?
You did not.
We are looking at Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby.
We're going to spoil this, probably all of it. We're just going to assume that people have a knowledge of the movie. And at this point, if you want to check it out yourself before listening to us talk about it, I would encourage you to do that. Now, Quinn, have you seen the remake?
The made-for-TV one with Zoe Saldana?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I had to. And you're probably going to ask me if I saw the sequel to Rosemary's Baby, which the answer to that is no. But I did see the remake, that TV movie. And our friend Jason Isaacs is in it.
Yeah, your boyfriend. So,
my boyfriend.
One of your boyfriends. I just watched the last scene. It was on YouTube when she hears the baby crying and then she goes and then she accepts the baby and they actually show the baby. Unlike in this version, we don't actually get to see the baby, just Rosemary's reaction.
Right, which I think is so much stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the reasons that I love these types of films where we're not shown everything. It's not all displayed. We are allowed to guess what we think it looks like or what we think is happening. And I like that so much more. And I think it's really, I don't know, I think it's a service to your audience when you do things like that. And when you show things, sometimes it becomes just so laborious and it leaves nothing up to the imagination. And thus maybe makes a film not live in our hearts as long.
Well, I was thinking about Angel Heart, which used to be in my top 5. I don't know where it is right now, but this was a movie that was dear to me because we actually took a day out of my film class when I was in high school to talk about it. And at one of the very last shots is the demon baby pointing to Mickey Rourke, and and the eyes are terrible. It's this 1987 special effects. It looks real bad, and it would have been, I think, a lot more powerful if it had been directed differently, and we hadn't gotten those cheesy demon eyes. So
yeah,
in the remake, they made them these beautiful blue eyes, kind of hauntingly beautiful blue eyes, but didn't do much for me.
Yeah, I don't like the remake. I mean, I had to see it. I think I actually bought it. So I think it lives on my Amazon Prime. I had to see it. I probably saw it a couple of times. I don't like it. I don't think that anybody should touch this, really. But, that's just me.
Well, let's talk about the orig. How do we want to go about this? Why don't you give us a general overview for those who have never seen the movie and never, considered watching the movie, maybe what it's about, and then I thought maybe we could just sort of talk about favorite moments or scenes or shots and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I'll start with just a brief summary. If you haven't seen it, which if you haven't seen it, you should just stop and watch it because it's worth your time. But the film it starts with Rosemary and Guy Woodhouse, a young married couple looking at an apartment, and it's kind of like their dream apartment. They end up moving in, and it's in New York City. They end up moving in, and they find out that a number of things have happened inside of this apartment building called the Bramford, which is actually the Dakota in New York City. They find out, that some nefarious situations have taken place there. They meet some new neighbors of theirs, their neighbors, Roman and Minnie Cavett, and they find out that they've got a young lady living with them who Rosemary sees doing laundry and has a conversation with. The next day or, a few days later, they come back from dinner and they see her dead on the sidewalk in front of the building. And that's when they officially meet Roman and Minnie. And, they're very upset because this young woman was living with them. And, in the next part of the film, they have dinner with them, start to get kind of close with them. Minnie especially is kind of like the annoying neighbor lady lurking everywhere, and that beautiful shot of her face in the keyhole as, one of the first introductions of Minnie is just fabulous. They quickly find out that Rosemary and Guy are interested in having a baby. Then Rosemary gets pregnant, and it just kind of whirlwinds into a very suspenseful, 2.5 hours almost of just things adding up on top of each other, and then slowly revealing that these neighbors are part of a satanic cult, and that Guy was actually not the one to get Rosemary pregnant, but it was actually the devil who came up in order to conceive a half-human son with a mortal. In the end, a lot of things happen, and we'll get into some of these things probably, but they tell her that the baby died, and she hears crying. She goes into Minnie and Roman's apartment and sees a whole group of culty folks in the living room, and then this black baby bassinet in the corner. And then it's revealed that the baby's alive. The baby is half mortal, half demon. And they would like for Rosemary to help raise the baby. And so in the end, she kind of gives into this, and the motherly instinct takes over. And that really is just a very quick summary of what happens. Of course, the movie is made because of the details, or it makes the film with the details. And those are lots of things I left out.
So what do you think, Quinn, makes this so suspenseful? I mean, it is scary to think of conceiving the devil's baby all by itself, but what else makes this so scary?
That's a good question. Some of the things that I think really work for this film is, I would call this sort of the definition of a slow burn. And I love a slow burn, and I know that you do as well. But it's not easy to achieve a slow burn. You have to really do your work with setting up this suspense. So I think because it takes place in New York City, it's not an isolated place, of course. It's a place with lots of people and lots of things happening. I think because Roman and Minnie they seem so sincere and so good and so just gracious and sweet, just like any neighbors that you would probably want to have if you were living in a busy city, with lots of people. So that sets you up, I think, right away to, I think that just builds the suspense. Of course, Guy's character is completely horrible, and we can get into some of the reasons why, but it sets you up for an experience where you feel like this woman really is, feels like she's being very much gaslit, also dealing with pregnancy and medical issues. I think that's horrifying. And the way that it's done slowly, and we understand it to be happening because of her appearance. So the makeup, I think, on this film is just incredible because, it's 1968, and you really just, by the end of the film, or middle to end of the film, when she's really sick and she's losing some weight, but she's still, pregnant, and she's interested in raw meats and things like that, her look is just it's just like a corpse. And I think that fear is something that builds inside viewers, even just her appearance. So without even anything being said, but of course, so many things are going around her that it just feels like she is isolated. She's isolated in a place that's not isolating, but in a situation that's completely isolating.
In the beginning, she does really go through a physical transformation. In the beginning, she is dressed in all these bright dresses, and she has longer hair that she puts like in pigtails. And then after she gets her hair cut by Vidal Sassoon, who I guess actually did cut her hair. I think I read that in the trivia. But most people have probably seen this picture, but it's very short. It's a very short cut, and it's almost a boyish cut. So she goes from sort of this like girly feminine appearance to, I don't know, more of kind of boyish kind of thing. I don't know. I love it, but Guy hates it. And as you said, as her pregnancy progresses, she gets very pale and she is in a lot of pain, but she hides it from everybody. She reveals it to her friends at one point, and they tell her that means something, and that means there's a problem. And there's nothing that a pregnant woman wants to hear less than there could be a problem. So I think you're right that taking a pregnancy as the basis for this horror was brilliant, because every woman, I don't care if you only have one pregnancy or you have, numerous pregnancies, every single one, I've had two, every single one is scary, even if you're even if you're the picture of health. So I think that's just a universal thing that people go through. So he was right on the money with that.
Yeah. And not feeling like you're being heard in terms of, anything, but especially a medical situation, where your body is telling you one thing, but somebody who is in a position of power is telling you something else. I think that's a really relatable fear, even if we're not looking specifically at pregnancy, trying to figure something out when somebody in power is saying, it's not that, it's not this isn't what it is, you don't have this. I think that's horrifying. And I think a lot of people have faced that. Probably a lot of men, and maybe a lot more women perhaps have faced that sort of medical diagnosis of like not knowing what's going on. And that is, I think, beautifully shown here too.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad that you pointed that out, because you're right. You don't have to have gone through a pregnancy to relate to knowing something about yourself and about your body, but being told by a doctor or somebody else in power that you're wrong or that it's nothing. And that's just that's pretty scary, because then you start to question yourself and your perceptions, and that can cascade to a very scary place. So I think that's pretty relatable. And not that it can't happen to men, but I would say, given the patriarchy, probably a lot more common that it happens with women.
Yeah, and the whole history of like hysteria and that shit, that's just ingrained, really, I think, in our culture to be targeted to women.
And he sets that up really well. I mean, the way that guy's a lot older than Rosemary is, and I think if my math is right, Mia Farrow was 23 and Cassavetes was 37. So, and that's about, I think, the age difference between these two. So, and he does treat her like a child. He's consumed with his own world and his own ambitions, but beyond that, everything that she's interested in, he discounts, and he doesn't pay attention to her. And when he does pay attention to her, he's critical of her. And it's a really gross dynamic.
Yeah, it is. And it starts off pretty bad until the end. And it's, he sort of, his way of explaining it is, it's just like if we would have lost the baby, we can have another baby. It's so much. I'll explain this to you in the way that it is, and you'll take it because this is the world right now. So even if it didn't have anything to do with the devil or, a cult or anything like that, and this was just a presentation of a marriage, holy shit, this is horrifying.
The moment where she realizes that she believes that he had rough sex with her when she was passed out, is it's so upsetting. It's so upsetting. And he even says, it was kind of fun, actually, in a necrophile way. And we know that actually she was raped by the devil, not her husband. But the thought that he would laugh it off and just assume that it was a perfectly fine thing to do, again, I think is just so disturbing. For some reason, it really hit me hard this time, because this might be like the fourth or fifth time I've seen it, so I knew it was coming. But she goes, "While I was out," like she can't. She's like, "What? You could have waited 12 hours. Like what? Why?"
Yeah, it's almost unbelievable. And every time I watch the movie, it just gets worse, I think, for me. So I think that's pretty normal to feel that way with that scene. And also, I was thinking this time how interesting it is that this came out in 1968. That's the year that the Hays Production Code ended, but it fizzled out before then. But 1968 is this kind of monumental year for films, and they were getting kind of wild and getting more targeted to younger audiences. But during like the heyday of the code, you weren't even supposed to really show pregnancy. You certainly couldn't show any sort of childbirth. So for the whole film to be really about her pregnancy, and then in the end, the birth, but also then you have scenes like that where there's this extreme rape, it's not even so much implied as it is we're seeing, visions of this horrific nightmare occurring, which is really happening, and so for this moment in time, like this was risky, I think, because, we're just at the end of the code, and 68's a cool year for films because they really did get wild. They really were like, hey, fuck the code. We're totally out of it at this point, and we're going to do whatever we want to do. 68 and 69 were really cool years. But yeah, I was thinking about that this time around just because just pregnancy you couldn't see. So crazy.
Well, and like we had a conversation about this movie on another show once, and I remember when I saw it and I told you I just thought this was, I was totally wrong about Guy's character when I first saw this movie. And he he figures out, as a way of sort of making up to her, he gives her all these roses, and he has figured out when she's ovulating and when is going to be the perfect time to get pregnant. And he's marked it on the calendar. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, he really loves her. And just totally missing, what was going on. And now, of course, knowing that it was all a scheme and, he's in on this whole conspiracy to get her pregnant. It just is so gross. But, she is so young and she wants to have a happy marriage and she wants to have children with this person. So it seems, she falls for it, hook, line, and sinker. So I don't know. It's
yeah, that would be exactly what she wanted to hear. So yeah, but no, I get it. Because it's, you want to find the good. That's what we look for.
Well, also one thing that hit me this time for some reason is Roman's knowledge of Guy's acting career. And I'm wondering how he knew all that, so what I'm imagining is like everyone just got on the case, like everyone in the cult, like, networked and like found out all these facts, and sort of prepped Roman for this dinner because he really lays it on, and everyone likes to be flattered, but Guy really eats it up.
Yeah, and he's not a well-known actor.
No.
And he's talking about like some obscure play. So yeah, that's like, of course, that's feeding right into everything that Guy wants, because we know, after having watched this a couple of times, or even at this point in the film, if you're just watching it the first time, that's what Guy wants, and he's kind of like put everything aside, especially the feelings and the thoughts and ideas of his wife. Yeah, that's a good point. Now I can imagine them all, on the phone, all the weird characters that we see collected throughout.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk to you about is, why are they all old? They're not all old, but all of the main people that we see, Laura Louise and the main people, are all over 50, most of them over 60. So what do you think that's all about?
I think there's a lot of this at this moment too. And when, do we know when Levin wrote the book? Ira Levin wrote the book. It was real.
67. Okay,
so this is a moment in time, I think, where there's this notion of, a distrust for older people. And then on that side, of course, starting to look at younger people and distrust that they can handle, the weight of the world and whatnot. So I think it's playing right into that setup of old versus young. But yeah, it's interesting to see that in the end. And you really are, I think we're supposed to really notice that and take note of what that means. Like, this is, and there's generations in between these two as well. So it's kind of the extreme.
Yeah. So maybe one direction we could go in is as Rosemary's body is changing, she's also changing in terms of becoming suspicious and trying to find out the truth. And that's one of the really fun sections of the movie for me, because we're rooting for her and we want her to figure out what's going on. And she gets out the Scrabble tiles at one point. And also she's obviously one thing that I just got really frustrated with her about was that she tells everybody all her business, like, all the time. And just like, Rosemary, like, zip it, like, because that gets her every time too.
I like that you pointed that out, though, because I think this time around too, I was thinking especially that, there's probably some really interesting literature out there on the feminist critique of this film, because she does figure everything out. And it is something that they've planned detail to detail. And it's something that's been set up for a while, something that's been in motion for a long time, and probably, of course, assuming it was in motion with Terry before she died. And it's really kind of fantastic. I love that part too, where she's got the Scrabble tiles and she figures it out. And, he throws out the book that Hutch gave to her or left to her. Then she goes and gets it from the bookstore, and another one that just works as evidence as to what was happening. Like, I remember the first few times watching this film, I completely did not realize what was happening when Guy rushes in, when Hutch is there. And, she says later that he came in with his makeup on, which he never does. And then, Roman rushes over right when Hutch gets there to meet him. And these are things I didn't even notice like a few watches in and didn't take note of at all. So I think it's really pretty amazing that she figures it all out.
And she lays it all out to Dr. Hill, who was her first doctor. And he's played by Charles Grodin. And he seems to be taking her seriously, even though it does sound pretty fantastical. But she's completely betrayed by him. And I just assumed he was a member of the cult. But I heard an interpretation recently that, no, he's just a guy who figures this lady's wacko. I need to inform her husband. What do you think?
Yeah. So that's really heartbreaking to see him seemingly believe her. Sometimes I think that it switches when she says that her doctor is Abe Saperstein. I think that it's very much set up that this man is famous within New York City, has treated a lot of, rich patients, and even her friends know who he is. So, it isn't set up that he's bad in any way, and he's very well known and very trusted. And I'm certain that Dr. Hill, he says he knows of him, and he wouldn't believe that of him. And then says, I don't believe in witchcraft, but I know the city is crazy and the people can be crazy. But I think it is maybe that moment where it's like, Abe Saperstein, I'm not going to fight that fight. But I don't know. A lot of times I just think maybe too that that doesn't make a difference to him. He's already decided that he's going to be calling her husband.
Yeah.
That is a heartbreaking moment.
I kind of like it if he's not in the cult and it's just that he's in the society where that's the default, that you don't trust women, that the man is the person that you do most of your business with. And if something like this, obviously, women when they're pregnant, they're a little wacky. But it is so heartbreaking because you think, oh gosh, this young, smart, cute man is going to help her, but no, he betrays her.
Yeah. And that kind of, I think I hate it, but it also is an interesting kind of juxtaposition of, if you're looking at it from the generational aspect, then you're going to want to trust Dr. Hill like she does. But it doesn't work out that way. So,
But there is a really great shot of Saperstein is facing her, and I guess Guy's in the doorway. I think I have that right. Or maybe it's the reverse. Anyway, somebody grabs her by her elbow, like you would like a child, and like just leads her out. And it's like, no, we're not trying to hurt you. No one's trying to hurt you. And it just gives me the willies.
Yeah. And he kind of makes that sort of threat. He's like, you don't want to have us take you to a mental hospital, do you? Mm-hmm. And of course, there's so much history there too.
Yeah.
And mental illness and institutions, things like that. And it's those bits too that I think make this such a lasting piece in our culture.
Yeah, I think Levin really, was tuned in, with this and Stepford Wives. Those are the only two properties that I'm familiar with. But man, did he nail the situation, the way that women are seen and the way women are treated in society. And my hat's off to him because both of those just are so chilling, in the way that society is presented.
Yeah, I know. I think he was really appalled by that and very interested in in presenting it in different ways. Also, he did this cool book called Boys from Brazil, which was made into a film, but the book is really neat, kind of about creating another Hitler. Anyways, I think that I absolutely agree with you. I think that he was ahead of his time, and he did a very good job of presenting this nightmare.
Oh, one thing, because one thing that's in the book that's not in the movie is there's this gay male couple that's like on the same floor. And, Rosemary is kind of, she's a small town girl and she's not that worldly. So she's describing, the apartment to maybe her brother or sister or somebody, and is like, well, it's pretty normal. Except for the abnormal things like gay men, but I think she likes that because it's different and it's outside of her experience and maybe it's a little exotic for her. But anyway, they don't show up in the movie. And I thought that was kind of an interesting choice.
It's been a long time since I've read the book, but like I mentioned to you and you agreed that it's very close.
Yeah.
Very close adaptation.
Well, and I think Levin wanted to, he drops all these little things in about religion and about Judaism and maybe about, being a homosexual couple in 1966 in New York City, but all these like sort of cultural things. And the Time magazine cover with, Is God Dead? I think that actually was 66. So that's why the story is set in that year. Of course, when the baby's born, it's going to be 666. So that helps. But I guess it was a pretty big deal. I don't know. It's a little before my time, but I guess there was a big cultural shift in the middle of the 60s in a lot of ways. And in terms of the impact that religion had on people, I think people were sort of moving away from organized religion.
And this is even I think before the quote unquote satanic panic.
Oh, yeah.
As well. It just sets up a lot of great conversations, I think.
How about shots? What are some favorite shots of yours?
I like the long takes. And I know that you put that in the trivia too, so I wanted to point that out if we didn't get to that piece of trivia. But I really enjoy long takes, and I think that to see it unfolding and sometimes to see people walk in and out of the frame is really important in this film, even if it's just Rosemary walking back and forth. But then near the end, when she gets back into the apartment and locks everyone out, they get in and you can see them tiptoeing behind her. I always remember that shot of those two men just sort of tiptoeing in this cartoon fashion behind her while she's trying to reach her friend Elise on the phone. And, moments later, Guy comes in and then everyone is there and Saperstein shows up with the syringe. He's shot a lot from low angles, which is consistent with, the power that he has. Roman's shot with low angles too a lot of the time. I don't know. This time I liked watching for the close-ups, which I don't usually notice in this film, or they don't come to mind as quickly as other things do. But the close-ups and then sort of the zoom or the panning out, there's a cool shot of Saperstein when she's apparently told him all this that she's found out about Minnie and Roman, and she's in his office, and it's a real close-up shot of Saperstein's face, and he's like, fantastic. Oh, that's just great. That he loves the story. It's such an adventure and he can't believe it. And it's so great. And he can't wait to tell everyone or something like that. And we get kind of a slow tracking shot out. And I don't know. I just liked that this time. It was something I noticed that I haven't before. The tone, the colors, the desaturation, I think is really great in this film, kind of sucking the life out of Rosemary throughout. You mentioned the bright outfits that she's wearing in the beginning and sort of how that saturation just gets desaturated and sucked out of her and, you know, of the, even in the apartment where it starts out dark and she decorates it very beautifully light and airy, but still this nightmare is taking place there. And I like that when you have a horror film that's, the setting is in a place that is just, you wouldn't, you know, imagine it to be. Like, okay, The Shining, you're in isolated, snowbound Colorado. Okay, I buy that. You know, and I love The Shining. But it's almost, I don't know, it's pulling off something much more interesting when you can set something in a light and beautiful, redecorated New York apartment.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the scene in It Follows, which I just think is brilliant. But the monster who's invisible attacks this woman on a sunny beach. And it's, to me, that is terrifying, that the evil can get you in broad daylight when there are lots of people around, and that the same thing is happening here. And there's a sort of creepy element in this movie with, you know, the singing through the wall and how she incorporates Minnie's voice into her dream. And it's old, creepy building to me. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's, you know, it's old. It's very old. And I love that about it. But plunking this 23-year-old woman into the setting it just is a little discordant. And I just like all the suspense that builds from this sort of creepiness. So it's not really scary per se. It's just that there's a sort of weird, creepy undercurrent throughout this whole thing.
Yeah. And it's weird because it kind of, it turns your stomach as a viewer. You know, it just like, it gets inside of you too, because it's this, again, it's like this slow burn. So it slowly does, to the point where maybe you don't even notice. And then all of a sudden she's sick. She's gaunt. She looks skeletal and blue almost. You don't feel good maybe because he's just little by little, like putting you in an intense suspense. And I just think that he does it so well. So much that, like, if you can have a physical reaction from a film, my goodness, that's just fantastic.
Yeah.
As Stephanie would say, fantastic.
Yeah, and it's almost like, obviously we know that she's not insane, but there are points in the movie where you might go, is this her imagination or what is going on? I mean, Minnie Castevet is annoying, but you wouldn't think that she's evil. I mean, she's just this busybody. And I love her costuming. That's one of the things that I always forget. And then I'm just like delighted when I see everybody's costumes, but especially Minnie's and Roman's too. That first shot when he's walking back after Terry has died in that pink suit, that seersucker suit. And he looks amazing. And it's just so bright, and it's just like a carnival or something. It's just, I don't know. They're so vivid. These old people.
And they just are so, they're set up to be this couple that's so sweet. And even though she is annoying, you know, she comes over and gives you dessert, and she asks you what you want if she's going out and things like that. And yeah, and the costuming is so just kind of magical, and everything is telling you to trust these people. And I love that their character stays consistent. Both of them stay consistent throughout the movie. Whereas even in the end, you know, one of the last things that Minnie says to her is, I can't do Ruth Gordon's voice. I wish that I could, but I shouldn't ever try. You know, but she's like, isn't it great he chose you? He wanted a mortal son and he chose you out of everyone in this world. It's just like, aw. He's so sweet.
She was perfect.
You know, another thing too that I just remembered that I've thought about this before, but it just hit me too, kind of adding evidence onto Rosemary's character and how, you know, how she's so she notices all these details in the beginning when they first go over to their house for their, 2-inch sirloin steak. She notices that the pictures have been moved off the wall, that the carpet, like furniture's been moved around and things like that. And of course, in the end, when she's walking through her apartment to theirs, you see the original artwork that was supposed to be there, or that always is, probably, unless random people come over, and it's like this dark, horrific stuff. Demons.
Yeah. And that first, I don't know. I just think this was a perfect bit of circumstance, the casting. I looked at some of the casting choices, or, people that they thought of in terms of guy, like Burt Reynolds read for the part. And I'm like, no, love me a Burt Reynolds, but he wouldn't. I can't really see anybody else, because Cassavetes is intense and he's handsome, but he's got a little bit of menace, but he's just perfect, I think, for this role. And obviously, I can't think of anyone else besides Mia Farrow for Rosemary.
I know, I can't either. I don't even want to think about anyone else. She's just complete perfection.
I found out some interesting things about the cast.
Let's hear it.
Well, I have this sort of obsession with who's dead and who's alive. And a lot of people are dead because this movie is old. But also, you had elderly actors in the movie. Obviously, we have Mia Farrow, who was 23. John Cassavetes, R.I.P., 1989. Complications from cirrhosis of the liver. Ruth Gordon was 72, and she died of a stroke in 85. Sidney Blackmer was 73. He died in 1973, but here is a fun fact. He founded the University of North Carolina School of the Arts.
No way!
Yes, and he received the highest civilian honor from the state of North Carolina, and he is buried in Salisbury, North Carolina, which is about 45 minutes from where we are.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. So
I
was he
know.
born in North Carolina, or was he?
I guess. I'm not sure. But we should go visit his grave because...
Yes!
Because Roman... Who knew?
Wow.
Maurice Evans was 67. He died in 1989 of a heart failure. Ralph Bellamy was 64. He died in 1991 of a lung ailment. Charles Grodin was 33. He died in 2021 of bone marrow cancer. And Alicia Cook Jr. was 65. He died in 1995 of a stroke. So most of the cast is not with us anymore. But I'm glad that we got all of their performances.
I can't imagine anyone else in any other role in this lineup.
Did you have a chance to look at the trivia?
Yeah.
What stuck out to you?
I almost don't believe this, but it says Mia Farrow actually ate raw liver for the scene in the movie, despite being a vegetarian at the time.
I've heard that from a couple of different places. Yeah, somebody just saying that she was so dedicated to this role. And I think I told you the last time, or one of the times we've talked about this movie, is that I was a vegetarian in between my pregnancies. But when I got pregnant with Mac, I really craved meat. And it makes sense that, in pregnancy, you'd want to get as much iron as you can. But I can relate to that. Just that feeling of just like needing to eat. Obviously, you're hungry all the time anyway, but that shot, I think, is so good.
Oh, yeah. When you mean the reflection.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. And she sees herself and she's like, I'm a monster. Like, that's her look. It's almost the same as the look in the end when she first sees the baby. It kind of is reminiscent of that. And probably should be. Yeah, that's interesting. I can't imagine. I've never, I don't have children and I've not experienced pregnancy. I can't imagine those types of cravings.
It's weird, I have to say, because it's like your body is telling you to do stuff, or, you might crave stuff that you wouldn't normally have a taste for, or I mean, but all this stuff is happening. I mean, your ribs are moving around and your heart's getting shoved up into, higher up in your body. And I mean, it's just insane what happens to a woman's body during pregnancy. Then at the end, I mean, it's just a nightmare. You have to pee all the time. You learn where all the bathrooms are, every place you go to. I mean, I don't know, but it is the body. I mean, I could understand how like Cronenberg or somebody could like go nuts, with body horror because you could see it that way. I mean, you could see it as magical or you could see it as horrific. And I think it's kind of both.
Wow. Yeah.
I guess you probably knew this, but it makes a whole lot of sense. But Mia Farrow does the vocals over the title sequence.
Yeah, just those alone are horrifying. And also, they will get into your head forever, unfortunately, unless you accidentally start randomly singing like Pippi Longstocking, which I did after watching the movie, and then that took over. But man, that lullaby will just take over.
So do you have a backup song? Mine always used to be Material Girl.
No, I don't. I probably need to get one because I get the worst, like just hauntings of, Pippi Longstocking. Like, come on, that's bad.
So I thought this was nice. The vodka blush is an actual drink. Roman prepares that for everybody, but it is normally served with sprigs of rosemary for garnish.
Oh, the carpet!
Okay, I had a question about Adrian or Stephen Marcato / Roman Castevet. How old is he then? Like, is he his age or has he been, he says he's been all over the world. Does that suggest that he's an immortal or somebody who's lived hundreds of years?
I've never thought that.
Okay.
I thought that he's his age.
Okay.
But, I just hadn't thought about it in that perspective. That's interesting.
If you were, I don't know, the son of a witch or something, and you had powers, I mean, you wouldn't have to work. You could travel the world. You could do whatever you wanted. And so, because when he does that whole speech about I've been everywhere and I've been traveling since I was 10 and, I'm like, well, you're laying it on a little thick here, but I mean, it makes sense. If he's a favorite of the devil's, then you can do whatever you want.
Sometimes that, if anything ever annoys me about this movie, it's that scene. I don't know. It feels so just scripted. Mm-hmm. I've been everywhere. You name a place. I've been there. Go ahead. Try me, But I do like it in the end, too, when she walks in and sees him and she says, I can't hear you. You're in Dubrovnik.
Yeah. So we haven't talked about the dream sequences, but I mean, are there any better dream sequences? I mean, I love how the reality just gets woven like it does, gets woven into your dream, and it's beautifully depicted in the book and just so perfect in the movie. And in the book, it sort of talks more about her psychology of feeling guilty that she was bricking up the windows or something. And so she had to confess to the Mother Superior, who was actually Minnie. And I don't know, it's just really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the way that those dream sequences kind of lean on her Catholic background.
Yes.
That becomes this guideline throughout those sequences, with Kennedy even, and just the sisters breaking up the window, and absolutely. And even in the end when she has a very small, more realistic dream sequence in the end when she's finally relaxing at Dr. Hill's office of what her future looks like with friends outside in this like bright garden, oohing and eyeing over the baby and stuff. But yeah, those dream sequences, I love the first one especially because you do hear Minnie, and it is so reflective of what a dream is like when you just hear pieces of things when you're going to sleep. Then your mind just puts together some weird stuff. But I don't know. I love dream sequences, and I don't know of a better example than this that's more realistic or more powerful.
But what I do like about this one is that thing that we all know what that is captured really, really well. And I don't know if I've seen that before. There's a scene in It Comes at Night. Have you seen that movie?
Yes.
Where a character wakes up. It's a dream within a dream, but he wakes up and he looks at his arms and then he like wakes up again. And it's very well done. Of course, An American Werewolf in London, one of my favorites. Yeah, I think he does something really special here and just gives you so much information about the character through the dream sequence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're just beautiful and horrific as well as dreams are.
I did look up some of the Dick Cavett clips, and it's so crazy. 1980, Ira Levin appeared on the Dick Cavett Show with Stephen King, and I think I told you Peter Straub and George Romero. And they're all fucking smoking. I don't think Dick Cavett is smoking, but they're all just like, and it's a sort of like lazy conversation. It's so unlike talk shows today. But apparently, Ira Levin sat quiet, pensive, and insecure when asked by Cavett if he was scared of the devil when he grew up. The quote is, "I don't recall being scared at all," Levin said of his childhood horror inspirations. "Now I'm terrified."
Wow.
But he went,
yeah.
You know, he's a Jewish atheist. That's the way I've always seen him described.
Okay, wow.
So I started doing this thing. I don't know if anyone likes it but me, but I started this new segment called Briefly. What does Letterboxd have to say about it?
Oh, I like this segment actually a lot.
Oh, good. Well, Christian Risling gave it 3.5 stars. Honey, there were so many red flags.
Oh, yeah. Christian.
There were, but I mean, I think, as we've said, it makes complete sense that she would ignore them.
Yes, we are just taught to trust authority and men.
Esha 43 gave it 5 stars and watched it, I think, on the same day that I did yesterday. Prequel to The Boss Baby. Yay with a, what is that, heart? Yay with a emoji heart. Gave it 5 stars. My God, is this movie unlike anything I've watched before. Just the aura of the movie itself, from start to finish, so unsettling. Nevertheless, a fun movie to watch, if fun is the right word to use. Yay, heart emoji, it is.
Oh yeah, it's the right word.
Aaron gave it 5 stars. Ari Aster, I just caught you in the act.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
But I also like to feature people who didn't care for the movie. A lot of people just were like, fuck Roman Polanski. This is a movie by a pedophile, and it's about rape done by a rapist. There was a lot of that. So, and we're not going to go there today. Maybe someday we'll come back to problematic directors, but I don't know if that's a fair criticism of the film.
I don't want to go there either, but I do want to say this. If you don't buy into auteur theory, the idea that the director is the total author of the film and is, responsible for every single aspect, then you can say, I think you can say at least, and I mean, I don't buy into auteur theory. I believe that directors can develop a style and we can see consistencies, and that is very cool to see. And I like to talk about those similarities that directors use, topics, themes, whatever, style, tone. But this film is the work of many, many artists together. And so that's all I feel like we could do a whole, semester show on this, because I think it's important to talk about.
Yeah.
Because no one agrees that Polanski is a good person. He's done terrible things, and he should be punished for those things. But his films, and looking at this one specifically, because this is the one we're talking about, is the effect of many, many creative people coming together.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And you've sort of helped me to see that too, because there is this discomfort that I have with, artists as we learn more about them and their problematic nature. It puts you in an uncomfortable position. I remember I was listening to this podcast, maybe it was a show, and then the podcast was talking about it, but it was about Michael Jackson, and it was just heartbreaking. I was never really a huge Michael Jackson fan myself, but I know a lot of people who were. And my boyfriend, for example, refused to watch it. He's just like, I just can't, watch it. I get that, it's hard to assimilate all that knowledge when it comes out and reconcile it with the hero that you have in your mind.
Yeah. So it's completely fair and valid to see reviews like that. That's fair. That's valid. But yeah, like you said, it's a process. That's where I am in the process right now.
So SM83 gave it a 0.5 star. The worst of the worst. Seen it on 3 occasions, and every occasion it let itself down. First up, it's boring. Second, it's ludicrous. Third, it's pointless. Don't bother watching it. You'll waste your life.
SM83, you're ludicrous, boring, and pointless. And on every occasion, you've let me down. No. I will just defer to what Max says sometimes when you read these bad reviews and say, they're wrong.
Well, I like it that SM83 gave it 3 shots, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why they did, but...
And that makes me even more mad, to be honest.
Yeah. And then Travis Vegan Straight Edge gave it 1.5 stars. Hail Satan, I guess.
Well, I'll take it. 1.5 stars, my gosh. Huh.
Well, Quinn, do you have any parting shots on Rosemary's Baby?
Probably I've said this before, but, like I mentioned in the beginning, this is it's kind of like top in my favorite movies. It has become, I hate to say this, but almost a movie that I can put on, and it kind of is like an old friend. It's like a feel-good movie. I know that doesn't say good things about me, maybe. But, yeah, I don't know. One thing I don't usually talk about, though, with this movie that, I just want to mention really quickly, because I've only shown it in my class maybe twice, but both times people got really hung up on the scene where when they first move into the apartment and Rosemary says, let's make love, after they're eating on the floor. They got really caught up in that scene, like how they thought it was really funny. And then I think about it more, and I thought about it this time, and it's kind of like a very realistic, scene.
I think that those are made by comments. Those comments are made by people who've never made love on a floor. It seems very natural to me, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's stopped them up, I think.
Virgins. Sorry. There's nothing wrong with being a virgin, but I don't know. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, well, they probably also have completely been raised by these like heavily edited sex scenes.
Yeah, that's true.
And I have too, but I'm mature enough to see a realistic sex scene and give it some praise.
All right, Quinn, thank you for talking with me about this and sharing this with all the WoHos.
Thank you. I will, I'll talk about this any day of the week and twice on
Sundays.
You know me. Can we give the You Fool Award, though?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because I think we're going to agree on this, right?
Yeah.
Sky?
Motherfucker. I mean, well, my thing about making deals with the devil, don't do it. It's like, you don't, there's certain things like, in the real world, you never go to a second location with a stranger, and you never make a deal with the devil.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just you stay on those Yamaha commercials, guy. You're going to make it on your own.
I don't think you would have, though.
That commercial was so bad. Hey, buddy, want to get on? Okay.
He was not a good actor, but one conversation is all it took, and that he sold his wife out, and ugh.
Yeah, it's like, what would Guy do for a Klondike bar? Oh, God. Sorry, that was lame.
That was good. Yeah,
okay.
I agree. I mean, I think a lot of people might say Rosemary herself, but I'm going to give her a pass because I think she did all that she could, and the cards were stacked against her, and I don't think that she could have gotten out of this situation.
Yeah, there was too many big entities that were stacked against her that we've talked about on the show. Absolutely, I agree with you. That's the easy way out. That's maybe what SM83 would say, but
yeah,
he's wrong.
Thank you for joining us for this episode and for all your support. It means the world of horror to us truly. And thank you, Quinn, for joining me. Next time on the main up, it's my pick of genre, and I have chosen creepy kid movies with The Orphan from the US and Goodnight Mommy from Germany. We also want to let you know to look out for some bonus minis coming in our Foundational International Horror Series and some more special guest favorite horror film series too. WoHos, we'd love to hear from you. Please email us at worldofhorror96@gmail.com or catch up with me on World of Horror Podcast on Instagram. Remember, we love you, and don't go into the basement.